everybody. My name is Derek Melinda, and welcome, my friends, to another Tuesday Table Talk, our ongoing, recurring, general GM RPG player, TTRPG nerd, hobbyist, enthusiast hangout, where we usually just hang out. We talk about whatever and whenever we want to talk about. We talk about your questions. I'll try to answer them. We can get some conversations going. And, of course, who knows where the stream may take us. These table talk sessions are really more just about if you and I were sitting around our game table or at a con someplace and we had nothing better to do for the next couple hours, and we were just going to, table talk and talk about the games that we both appreciate and love so much. So I'm glad that you have decided to join us. If you're watching here with us tonight live, thank you so much for being here. If you're checking us out later, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it if you'd give us a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more of this content. Click the bell icon if you want to be notified every time we post a new video or we go live. And of course, a lot of the folks you're going to meet here tonight in the chat are members of the Knights of the Last Call Patreon, patreon.com/Knights of the Last Call. We are, to my knowledge, the largest Pathfinder 2 focused Patreon in existence. So it's a pretty cool group, but we're not just about Pathfinder 2. We cover all sorts of different role-playing games, and boy, we play a lot of them too. So lots of fun had there in the community, lots of cool options, lots of really, really good benefits and cool perks for signing up for the Patreon. So check us out. Maybe it's the right place for you. How is everybody doing tonight? We were just kind of chatting and catching up before we got into it. It seems like everybody's having a really good time today. KC, welcome. Welcome. So Pillsbury was just sharing with us that he ran Root and thought that some of the tips and advice that we had all discussed and shared here on the live streams were pretty useful. Pillsbury says it was mostly having the confidence to not over-prepare and dictate what the players do, instead trying to react to the choices they made. Well, that's great, Pillsbury. Reactive emergent gameplay, and certainly that is one of Powered by the Apocalypse style game's strength, because you're not as reliant upon stat blocks and complicated skill checks and DCs. All of that's pretty much automatic or taken care of. And so it gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to basically, wing it and go with the flow. So that's really great to hear. Chaotic says, hello. So Halloween is right around the corner, and I'm trying to plan a one-shot with the group, Pathfinder 2nd Edition, level 6 characters. Have they played Pathfinder 2 before, Chaotic? Because dropping level 6 characters on a group that has not had a lot of experience with Pathfinder 2 may not always be the best result that you were intending for. But let us know. Yeah, all the types of RPGs and what other sort of random hobby you want to talk about. I'm also a passionate woodworker. I've been known to sail. What else? I played some racquetball, some hockey. All that stuff. Good evening, Savore. Welcome. And I was saying before we get into the chat, if you're interested in asking a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. Put question : the instructions are in the doobly-doo below. If you want to drop a super chat or a tip, we appreciate that. Certainly we'll try to get to your question first. And if I do miss your question, because just because you tip doesn't mean I won't answer your question. But if you do ask a question, I miss it. It's just because, maybe the chat's growing too fast and I missed it or something like that. Or I was getting really off on some tangent or some rant or something like that. Anyways, I was saying before we went live that we'll try to, talk about questions and answers and anything like that. If we don't have anything like that, I do have a couple of ideas that we could continue to follow up on. Last Thursday, not our most popular stream of all time, I will admit, but last Thursday we broke down dungeon design. And so what I thought we might do tonight as well is definitely talk a little bit more about how I'm building this upcoming dungeon for our Northern Reaches campaign, which, by the way, unfortunately, it is closed for the season. You can still join the Patreon, and you can still, be part of all the excitement and stuff like that and see what happens and get ready for Season 2. But Season 1 is now closed to new players. So you're going to have to wait until next January timeframe to be able to get in on Season 2. But the good news is Season 2 will be a fresh start for all the players. Everybody will be back to the same spot. So it could be a great way for you to enter the campaign anyways. But don't let that discourage you from signing up for the Patreon. Rick, buddy, it's not a party until you get here. So you can't be late by definition. Damien says, I was going to super chat, but that's the shittier goal. Well, Damien, I'm sorry. Listen, if for whatever reason you're incapable of tipping and you have to super chat, but you want me to manually put your money into the other goal, you let me know and I will do that. I do that for GM Scott sometimes. He likes to tip even if he supports the super chat goal. We've just, we always like to keep fun goals, fundraisers for the channel. We actually haven't had one of those for a long time because, quite frankly, the general level of support that we've been getting from our patrons, from our supporters, our tippers, our YouTube members has been so high. We've been able to basically buy what we need, more or less. So it's actually been quite good. I actually just spent a couple $100 the other day on fake windows for the set build that is underway. So that's looking really cool. I'll share. I think I'll have some stuff this week to share with the patrons as the studio build keeps going underway. So that'll be a lot of fun. But don't let that stop you, Damien. The reason I bring this up is we're going to talk about Pathfinder 2 on this channel, week in and week out. But we like to do other things as well. And we did a couple of videos when 1D&D was first kind of getting some momentum going. We haven't really talked about it as much since. A lot of other great YouTube channels, Rules Lawyer in particular, have been doing a lot of great videos about 1D&D. Didn't know if there was any interest in seeing some of our, goals tonight. Some of our thoughts on the 1D&D process, the releases that have come out, etc., etc. Alternatively, I love to talk about non-D20 based games, Powered by the Apocalypse games, Forged in the Dark games, Legend of the Five Rings, 2D20, you name it. Those videos typically don't get as many views or as much interest as, say, a Pathfinder 2 or certainly a 1D&D video would do. But ultimately, I do this for you. And I do this for my patrons, and I do this for my supporters, and I do that for the people who come out and watch these videos. So really, if that's what you want to see, well, that's probably what we'll do. So let us know. Throw your support wherever you want it. Sarah said, I brought my Dungeon World book with me, cool, to Vegas to finally start reading it. I was inspired by your tips video I watched recently. Yeah, that's a great video. Dungeon World is not, to me, just a system. Even Powered by the Apocalypse, to me, is not just a system. It's a philosophy. It's a philosophy of gaming. And I think Dungeon World, Sage Latora and Adam Koebel did a really good job of describing how principles and agendas can really shape, change, and dictate the way that you run a game. So, that's awesome. Hey, we got a super chat from Scratch Paper Games. Thought about what you said last time. So for a cleric, I'd make it the body of an evil cleric sealed behind a wall looking to torture via dark visions, or a good cleric reaching out for help. So Scratch Paper Games is going all the way back to our last Thursday where we were talking about dungeon design. And we were talking about, how could dark dreams or dark machinations be disturbing them. I like both of those ideas, Scratch Paper Game. Particularly the second one. I love the idea that this good cleric is trapped maybe in a nightmare existence, and they're trying to reach out for help, and they're not meaning to help they're not meaning to hurt anybody with their psychic emanations, but they can't help it. And it's sort of a kind of a cool idea. It's kind of creepy and spooky. Maybe I think we'll probably use that. I think that'll be pretty cool. Maybe we'll put that into the Spirit Tower where we are the Spirit Spire that we talked about last time. If you don't know what we're talking about, check out last Thursday's VOD. We talked a good deal about an adventure that I am trying to design for my patrons to run them through that. So, might have to roll out my untouched level 1 Flurry Ranger for some of these end game and boss Northern Reaches sessions. It'll be like a Diablo 2 Mephisto run. There's a real rock and hard place vibe to the tip goals tonight. Well, to be clear, Boothby, like I'm saying, we're always going to cover, Pathfinder 2, but this is more like, what do we want outside of that? That is always going to be something that this channel is going to continue to do. I refuse to be. I talk too much about avoiding being pigeonholed into one RPG, of only looking at one RPG, for me to ever focus entirely on just one RPG. So,
Combat Medic Bush tip $25.
Hey, thank you, CMB, $25 tip. We love Combat Medic Bush. Definitely support all the wonderful, incredible, great work that he's doing, and of course he's a great supporter of the show. So thank you. In fact, he's has his own nickname, right? The CMB. And CMB showing his support for some more non-D20 videos. And I know Combat Medic Bush does like his non-D20 based games, which is great. So thank you, Scratch Paper, and thank you, Combat Medic Bush. Hey, London, welcome to see you. Welcome to see you. Hi, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Good to see you. Fail. Anyways, how are we doing on this music? Do you guys hear this? Let me boost this up a little bit. Tell me if it's too loud. I just boosted the music a little bit. It should just be quiet. We're vibing. Rag on Wolfbane, who's supposed to be on duty. If a system lacks resource management, aka PF2, how do you introduce resources that the party can manage without overwhelming them with record keeping, or is that the price you have to pay? Well, Regan Wolfbane, the key is to just not give them too many resources. If you're familiar with our Quest for the Frozen Flame game, I gave them a meta resource for sort of the following, which represents the morale of their tribe, the strength of their herd, the amount of food and water supplies, and then the total number of people in the tribe, a population score. It's just 4 things. I think you could get away with doing 3 things if you really wanted to track some sort of resource. Keep the number low. Avoid hundreds. Avoid 10. Make it between 1 to 20, 1 to 5, 1 to 10. Something manageable, something resource dependent. I mean, if you're willing to house rule, some of the cool new games that have come out have used the idea of resource die. Instead of tracking a number, you track the dice. You can either write it down in your sheet, or in some cases have the die physically out in front of you, and maybe you have different dice. And so what will end up happening is, like, a D12 might represent a lot of that resource. And as that resource dwindles away, it becomes a D10, and it becomes a D6, or D8, and then D6, and et cetera, et cetera. Forbidden Lands does this, and it's pretty cool the way that they do it. And I'm a big fan. So that way you don't really have to track it so much. It kind of auto tracks in its own way. Let's see. Sorry, getting caught up here. I'm thinking currently of Kingdom Maker 2 Kingdom Management System when this question came to mind. Okay. Well, I'm not familiar with the 2nd edition Kingdoms Management System. Yeah, I think Darth Gorlock had a question. Do you mean like resource management from a simulations perspective or from a game resource perspective? So people, anyone some inspiration for my fast season prep while build this mini balk of this arc? Levi, I don't quite know if that's a question or not. I'm sorry if it is. I guess you're looking for some inspiration for this mini boss. All right, we can work with that mini boss. Hold on a sec. Let's bring up the bring up the Tome of Adventure design. All right, somebody give me a number in chat between 1 and 100. Okay, that isn't from a 4-year-old. All right. Well, it's from the person himself, 77, Levi. All right. So let's take a look here. Okay. From the Tome of Adventure Design, I'm trying to share this with you guys. There it is. All right. So we're looking for a boss, huh? So this is going to be a monster. So we're going to go to page 87. All right. All right. So the first number we got was a 77. So that would suggest that this monster is planar in origin. And then we had, I think, the next one was a 6. So let's get a starter image for our body's form. All right. it's a planar badger. Well, oh no, this is for an animal. Okay. I was like, what the hell? That's not planar. Oh, that's funny. I'm not very good for planar. Dragons. Oozes, element OP, macrobios. Look at all this stuff here. Planar creatures. There we go. All right. So the next 6 would be a dark angel. All right. So we have some sort of corrupted or fallen angel. I see the next one in the chat is Rick Sherman, who rolled a 17. And so for our dark angels are tempters and plotters of demonic and fiendish realms. Ooh. They have a basically humanoid appearance, but with one or more demonic hints. If the Dark Angels engage in infiltrating society, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so the 6 indicates birthmarks or marks on skin. So yeah, I like the idea of, there's this, strange-looking humanoid who maybe has these sigils carved or graven into his skin or her skin. But it's for all intents and purposes normal looking, but there's clearly power beneath that. And maybe they have some sort of evil angelic. It's a great opportunity to maybe use angel or traditionally good aligned celestial type creatures and sort of convert them into a bad guy form. And maybe they start off as sort of more of a spellcaster using like these, symbols. And then once they reach half hit points, AKA bloodied, maybe you transform them and they shed this sort of disguised form and they unleash their full dark angelic specter with the wings and the halo and all of the horrible things that are sort of, falling off of them. That could be pretty fun. So I don't know. Maybe we go with something like that. So I don't know if that's what you need, but that would be what I might do that. So, what else do we see here? The villainous plans table from Toad is dope. Yeah, that's your most used table. Yeah, it's really good too. Sarah is asking, what is this PDF? Sarah, this is the Tome of Adventure Design, which you're sort of in luck, but also not in luck. The Tome of Adventure Design was a book released, I think, in 2008, and was out of print for a very long time. I had a copy, of course, and I mentioned it to some of my patrons who promptly went out and bought up all of the copies on eBay and Amazon, and then there were no more left. But then, like, literally that same month, Matt Finch, who wrote the book, did a Kickstarter for a new revised version of the book. And to be quite honest with you, it's exactly the same book. The only thing that they added was a little bit of different art. And one of the things that they added here in the margins of every single page is just these random idea generators, all this stuff here in the black margins. Automaton, a meeting of sorcerers, shifts to random places. It's just something so that when you're trying to put two ideas together, you kind of look here and you say, oh, a meeting of sorcerers. Oh, okay, yeah, maybe that's what this is. Maybe there's two rival sorcerer clans or cults, and they have been trying to seize control of this city for generations, but finally there's a bigger problem. Maybe it's the PCs, and so the sorcerers are having sort of almost like a mafioso meeting of the families, and the sorcerer leads the heads of the sorcerers are meeting together because they are going to perform a ritual that only the 5 of the groups can, I don't know. Anyways, my point is, it's just to take these ideas and inspire you. So anyways, it is literally a book of random tables of all sorts of types for creating adventure ideas, villainous plans, random monsters. What else is in here? Dungeon design. We talked about that one. It's just got basically endless random tables. It's not really something that I would say is intended to be used live, like while you're playing a game. I mean, you could in a pinch. I like to use it as part of my prep process. When I'm sitting down and I say, I have no idea what I want this dungeon to do or to be, I can just go in here. I can, get some percentage dice, or even better, get a 100-sided die. Look at that. All right. And then roll a 100-sided die and say, okay, I got a 70. And I go, okay, what is I have a structure. I have a site-based adventure. I have a dungeon. I have some sort of ruin. What is this place? Now, this isn't going to make any sense. It's our job to sort of make it make sense. So I rolled a 70. So this is all right, 70 is a mud. Okay, let's roll D100 again. What do we get here? I got an 11. It is a mud cairn. But already I'm kind of like, I don't really like the idea of a cairn. But what about right above it? It's a bridge. Okay, so it's a mud bridge. Let me roll percentage again. I got a 86. A mud bridge of the secret. Ooh, this is exciting. And one last one. A 20. What's it a secret of, people? Okay, it's a mud bridge of the secret changeling. So now maybe this isn't an encounter, but maybe this is some sort of structure or something like that. It's some sort of malleable bridge. Now I'm imagining like it's like a big changeling. It can shape shift. And like this isn't what the original prompt was. It's just getting my mind thinking about now there's this like super large, gargantuan sort of changeling creature, and maybe for centuries it was just stuck in this bridge form, and then people started to notice that it was collapsing, but in reality the changeling is waking up and it's confused and it doesn't know what to do, and maybe it's a interesting encounter, or maybe it's a whole adventure, or maybe it's just something to fight. Anyways, point is, I think it's a really cool way to just get inspired. I don't try to take it super seriously or super like exactly on the point. I use it to be inspired, and I have no problem shifting or changing or going in a completely different direction, based on what what it inspires me to do. Sorry, there's a bunch of chat here. KC says, I thought the random text in the margins was dumb at first, but it's actually triggered a bunch of interesting ideas. Oh yeah, as soon as they announced that they were doing that, I was like, that's awesome. I love it. That was definitely a big win for me. Hey, put this in the other games tool. Thank you for the $5 super chat from Damien. He says, I don't want this going to the tips. I don't want this going to the super chat. I want this going to the tips. All right, buddy. All right, up 30, down 10. There we go. Bloop. There we go. Put this in the other games tool and towards the purchasing of the Chronicles of Darkness PDF. I'd like the Derek take on the social maneuvering system. Damien's goal in life is to finally bring me around to bring me around to playing Chronicles of Darkness. Thank you, Damien. Appreciate it. Maybe one day, sir. One day we'll get there. Yeah, it's a really great book, Levi. You should definitely check it out. Have I or would I ever use an oracle mid-session? It's not as much my style, Pillsbury. That's not to say I will use an oracle mid. I will use an oracle mid-session if, like, the group is kind of like, oh, what else? What's going on in the town? Who's at the inn? If I really don't have any particular ideas, sometimes I will pull out an oracle, and I will just be like, when we play Blades in the Dark, and the group would basically say like, Blades in the Dark has a couple oracle tables in the back of it, and the group will be like, oh well, maybe we're looking for work, maybe we're looking for a quick job that we can pull, and is anybody in the market for some shenanigans? And I might roll randomly in the back of the book and come up with like, oh yeah, there's a wealthy, widow, widower, and she is trying to, I don't know, kill her husband's brother so he doesn't inherit any money, and she's looking for somebody to either kill him or, can frame him for something. And I might have pulled that out of an oracle. Where I do not use oracles the way that some people use oracles is I don't tend to use oracles to resolve in uncertainty in the game. So like, if the group opens a secret door, I will either know what's behind the secret door because I have prepped for that, or I will kind of go with what's natural or what I know from this area, what has been narratively established in the world, and I will try to keep that flowing, as opposed to saying, I don't know, let's go find out. I mean, sometimes, maybe, but it's not as much my style. I tend to use it more as like a mid-session, hey, where are we going next? So, but yeah. KC says, Dark Tower of the Unholy Tyrant was one out of the prompts I got recently, and it's led to some really interesting campaign arcs. That sounds pretty sweet. All right, so you know what? Keep your questions coming. Keep your tips coming. But I'm going to hop over here to my whiteboard. So this is what we were working on Thursday, as a reminder. And this is going to be sort of a follow-up to that, but it's also going to be pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Agnostic to what we were doing on Thursday in terms of, you don't necessarily have to have watched Thursday to get value out of this. What I want you to kind of walk you through is the way that at least I try to make interesting combats. And sort of as a quick reminder of what we were doing on Thursday. I am in the process of creating a sort of a mini dungeon, a series of adventures for my patrons for the end of our Northern Reaches game. And one of the ideas was I wanted to create a tower, which has sort of been established as being part of our world, and it's guarded by a powerful villain who actually used to be a player character owned by one of our patrons, a gent by the name of Frosty, who had a cleric named Helios, who basically turned to the dark side and has sort of forfeited his soul. So now he's a terrifying, corrupt, undead Forsaken. And so we came up with this idea of several themes that would be incorporated throughout this dungeon. Ideas, concepts, mechanics, even within Pathfinder 2 that I wanted to explore. This doesn't have to be a Pathfinder 2 thing. 5th edition has darkness and invisibility. It has incorporeal. All of these things exist. But these were the ideas of what I wanted to sort of really focus on. And we were talking about different design layouts, and we kind of ended up with this idea of a tower with a central area where this Helios could be defeated. He needs to be defeated by the adventurers of the town before they can make their final assault on the gates of hell, the Maw. But there are 3 spires that are adjacent to the tower, each of which contains a powerful soul vault, which contain one of the spirits or souls, rather, of one of the game's past slain heroes. And those are being used to empower Helios. And if these can be defeated, not only will that character be returned to life and his soul or their soul will be free, but Helios will be that much more weakened, or the group will be that much more empowered when it comes time to fight him. And so then the idea became, okay, well, from practical considerations, I'd like to run this as a series of 3 to 4 sessions. Our campaign ends in end of November. I'd like to wrap it up within, 3 or 4 weeks, so that the group has time to try to assault this Maw. And that means that realistically, I need to design this dungeon so that it can be beaten in 3 to 4 sessions. There's nothing wrong with logistical concerns factoring into the way that you design a dungeon. And let me bring this up here. New whiteboard here. Okay. Call this the Tower of Shadow, a Spire of Shadow. Okay, that's what we were calling it. And so, again, the idea here is that we can build our sort of spires in such a way that maybe each one can be probably taken in one session, right? That way, if we have 3 spires and we have this sort of one, big bad evil guy fight, that should probably take 3 to 4 sessions, maybe 5 at the absolute most. But also too, I'm thinking about in terms of, will this be a satisfying session? Will a group come in, and if a group comes in and they play for, let's say, 4 to 6 hours, and in that time they go into one of the 3 spires, they're able to beat it, overcome its challenges, maybe get some cool treasure, have some cool encounters, learn some fun lore, progress the world a little bit, find a soul vault, release its thing, weaken Helios, right? And then at the end of that session, they're going to be given experience points, treasure, but they're also going to have that narrative victory of advancing the campaign, helping, further the fight against Helios. And so that to me seems like a really admirable goal. So I'm planning or expecting that I'd like for people to be able to defeat one spire in one session. And again, that session will be something between 4 to 6 hours. So let's just say on average, let's just say 5 hours. Maybe we'll go a little long, or maybe we go a little short. We're going to lose a little bit of time. Now, the target level range for this is like level 9 to 10 for a PC. At that level, even with Foundry, and let's just say, and we'll say 5 PCs. Okay, so 5 PCs, levels 9 to 10. At that level, at that range, I reasonably expect most combat is going to take about 1 hour for like a full, a fully developed combat. So that means that in addition to other exploration, now again, I'm not a big, you have to do everything in the Spire. No, you don't have to do that. You can and you should create more than maybe you need. Because maybe the group do really well. Maybe they take out some of these combats really quickly. Maybe they solve some of these encounters in a very creative way. You want to be able to say, okay, well, I got some more content for you. So I think for a 5-hour session where we expect for a combat to take 1 hour, you're going to also have, some time at the beginning while everybody's getting ready. You're going to have some time at the end. I think that we should aim to have between 3 to 4, what I would call combat encounters, like a real legitimate combat encounter, in order to satisfy this encounter, or to satisfy this dungeon. Hey, Ben, welcome. Glad to see you, sir. I wasn't sure if chat was broken. I didn't see anybody. And again, if anybody has any thoughts, comments, questions, let me know. But I just kind of want to walk you through what I do for this. So, okay, so 3 to 4 combat encounters. Now, there might be there might be some non-combat encounters as well. These could be puzzles. These could be encounters that maybe were intended to be comments. But ultimately, I think when I say 3 to 4 combat encounters, these are probably combat encounters that I expect for the party to have to, that they'll end up fighting. Also, I don't think I'm not ashamed to admit that. This is Pathfinder 2. And Pathfinder 2, people put a lot of emphasis into their characters' combative abilities, and I don't think that's a bad thing to get them to be challenged using those combative abilities. Ben, we are talking about sort of a high level how I would go about designing combat encounters for my upcoming game. Thank you, Shadron. That's exactly what I was saying. So first, one of the things that I really want to stress here, and this is something I used to do all the time back in the day when I worked at Progressive Insurance, I would sit there in really boring meetings and I would design encounters in this exact methodology. And one of the great things about this is it's very, very reusable. But first, we need to establish a couple of baseline assumptions so that you and I are speaking the same language. All right. The first thing is, when I'm talking about a creature in combat, as a game master, I'm going to be running not just multiple creatures, but I'm also going to be overseeing and paying attention to a bunch of players. For me, it's absolutely critical that I know before that encounter even begins, what is this creature's role in this combat? What is its mechanical job? But also it's a shorthand for me. What am I supposed to do with this character? And I want to make sure that it is painfully, brutally apparent to me and to my players what this thing is. Because Pathfinder 2 encounters, specifically Pathfinder 2, aren't very long. And so the players aren't going to have a ton of time to figure out exactly what they need to do. And so for me, it's important that my creatures, my foes, can get in there and start creating interesting tactical challenges for my players to begin with. Now, if you're familiar with either 3rd edition's book called Dungeonscape, or you're just familiar in general with 4th edition, these concepts of a creature's or a monster's role should be fairly common or fairly well known to you. But if they are not, then let's go through these really quickly.
Rick has tipped
$25.
Rick. Derek, hopefully you will cover the mechanics of the party level and how to make an encounter balanced or even a bit tougher than balanced.
Yes.
THX.
Yes, we will. Rick, I'm going to do that. Actually, I'm going to do this first, and then I'm going to do that second. Like I said, one of the things I want to point out here is that this is universal, and this is a great process to do. It's fun. It can be fun as well. So first, I want to talk about the role. Okay. Now, I think Pathfinder 2 did a disservice to this because even in the book, even in the GMG, it talks about creatures belonging to a certain role. If you've ever built a monster through PF2 Easy Tools, you will see them talking about stat blocks for creatures like Sniper, Soldier, Magical Striker, or things like that. So Pathfinder 2 was already kind of aware of this concept. I think they did a horrible disservice by not making it a component in the game, a trait, a part of a creature's stat block, and then giving those creatures very precise, specific abilities that really latch on to that role and increasing that role's potential. All right, so let's get into it. What is a creature's role? All right, the first type of creature is a soldier, okay? And I usually abbreviate these as an S. So a soldier is typically going to have good defenses, a limited offense, and then some form of control ability. Now, in Pathfinder 2, for me, this usually means something like attack of opportunity, or it means something like, grab or trip. The point of a soldier is think from a PC perspective, think champion, right? The ideal situation here is the players don't actually want to fight this guy. They don't want to attack them. They're not a real threat for the party. They exist to be a pain in the butt. The party's goal with a soldier is essentially to ignore them or to make it so that they can't lock them down. They can't control them. They can't make it difficult for, this type of thing. Now, again, there are some changes that I make in Pathfinder 2, even when I'm designing monsters. Most monsters that I use in Pathfinder 2, I'm sorry to say, I custom build because I find that the monsters in the bestiaries, I'll use them as ideas or templates, maybe for inspiration, but I find sometimes that they feel just they're just too all over the place, and they don't do enough what I want them to do and what I need them to do. But one of the most important things here about a soldier is you need to reminder of, and I see Darth Gorlak says, think champion except can do some damage too. Yeah, but I would definitely say that they are going to be of limited damage, right? Part of the goal here is you want these creatures to have weak points. Too many monsters in Pathfinder 2 do not have like something they're bad at or something that you can exploit. So for me, the soldier's weakness is they don't do a lot of damage. They are more about being high armor class. And you're like, okay, well, my PCs will just ignore them then. Great. Then your PCs are playing the encounter well. They're playing the encounter smartly. But then maybe the soldiers have abilities like grabbing and tripping or attack of opportunity or something else, something new that we just thought of that will, it's like you want to encourage the players to be like, you know, I don't want to attack this guy, but now I feel like I have to attack them. Shadram says, would they be low mobility too? Absolutely, Shadram. Low mobility is also a defining trait of a soldier type monster. Why? Because if the soldier can move quickly, then getting away from them isn't really a win for your character because they're just going to come over and stand next to you and do their thing again. Now, this is a little bit more tricky in Pathfinder 2 because of the 3-action economy. I'll be honest with you, because most characters can move twice and then do something like strike. And a lot of times their cool ability is 1 action. And so for me, when I think about soldiers, a lot of times for their control ability, I want to make sure that that's probably a 2-action maneuver. I'm kind of getting off topic here, but it's a 2-action maneuver. And the reason why I want it to be a 2-action activity, I should say, the reason I want it to be a 2-action activity is actually twofold. Number one, I want to speed up my turn. If my creatures that I design always have basically the ability to like move and then do their 2-action activity, and all my creatures do that, then I will have cut the number of, if I have 4 monsters, instead of taking 12 actions, I'll now be taking 8. So I will have cut the amount of actions I am taking by 33%, which is huge. Secondly, if the creatures don't need to move or they don't need to stride, then it's easy enough for me to just say, oh, they're going to do their 2-action activity, and then they can make a strike with -5, right? It's just real quick and simple and easy. I like to keep it as a 2-action activity because then I can balance it. Like a great example for like a soldier would be the knockdown. This is a fighter feat, but you could use it as, if you need to, you could repurpose it as a ability. It's 2 actions. It's a strike. If you hit them, then you get to make an athletics check and you trip them. It's like, cool. That's kind of what we want out of a soldier. They're annoying, but it's not like they're going to be sitting there just like critting you and doing 1,000,000 damage, because then you're like, wait, this thing is annoying, but it's also doing a lot of damage. So, ideally, the group would ignore the soldiers and go, right? Soldiers defend. Soldiers are protectors. They're bodyguards. They're Yojimbo. Ideally, what you do is, if the party is smart and the party is doing what the party should be doing, they will ignore the soldiers and they will go kill all of the targets that the soldier is defending. And then once all the real threats are dealt with, assuming these creatures are fighting to the death, which it kind of is always sometimes the case, then the soldiers are easy to clean up, because they're not really going to pose that much of a threat. They don't have abilities that are going to allow them to do a bunch of extra damage. Again, sometimes with Pathfinder 2, you'll see a creature and you'll say, oh, wow, this thing's really great, really powerful. And then it'll randomly have sneak attack damage. And you go, why the hell does this thing have sneak attack damage? It should not have sneak attack damage. This thing is supposed to be low damage. So that is where the soldier kind of comes in as well. Awesome is bringing up the knockdown ability. You mean plus knockdown? Yes, plus knockdown is not a bad option either, as well. Either way, it's kind of like a 2-action thing. So this is a soldier. This is sort of our baseline for our defending type creature. Okay. So our next type of creature, that we'll talk about here, is going to be kind of the opposite of the soldier, and that is the artillery, which I usually signify with an A. So the artillery is usually low hit points, low AC and defenses, high attack plus high damage. Okay, we can't. Typing is hard. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Plus high damage. Artillery tend to be, you know, I'm going to put here semi-mobile. Okay. Artillery are like the damage abilities, are the damage dealers of an encounter. And I don't care what the Pathfinder 2 rule sets say. When you make an artillery, you want to make a glass cannon. This is a creature or foe. Now, by the way, when I say artillery, you might be thinking ranged weapon with a bow. It doesn't have to be. It could be, you know, what I call like a fake spellcaster. And what I mean by that is technically, I mean, you know, you style them as a wizard, but they don't actually cast spells. All right. You just give them, you know, a 2-act, almost like a thaumaturge with their wand implement. You give them some sort of 2-action, you know, fling fire ability. And they just, you know, they just launch a blast of fire. You don't need to track spells. You don't need to track spell slots. But thematically, they are dealing damage. And they're doing high damage. And they have actually a lot of accuracy. Left to their own devices, these creatures will tear a party apart. They will do a lot of damage. They are artillery, so they will. Their sort of defining component here is they are ranged. And so one of the challenges for the party and one of the challenges for you as a game master is, okay, if the party can engage these artillery monsters, they are going to die very quickly. They have low hit points, they have low defenses, they have low armor classes. So I want to be able, as a game master, to protect these artillery. And this is what a lot of the other monsters are going to do. I don't need my soldier monster to do a lot of damage if the artillery monsters are doing a lot of, if the artillery monsters are doing the damage, then the soldier monsters don't need to be able to do the damage as well. Okay. And when I said semi-mobile, just like the soldier, you don't want these creatures to be very high speed, because part of again, think of like an artillery platform. I know they could be literally, you know, a drow priest or a drow archmaester, and they're sitting there flinging fire. It doesn't have to literally be a lumbering, big, slow thing. But part of the fun of the challenge of this fight is, if I can figure out a way to maneuver my way across the battlefield and get to this creature, then I've kind of done the thing. And one of the things that you'll notice as I go through all of this is that a lot of the themes here are about keeping, is about making movement, mobility is going to be the key component of the game. I played a lot of Warhammer growing up into my 30s. And, you know, there's 4 phases to a Warhammer game. There's movement, magic, shooting, and melee. And any Warhammer player will tell you that movement is where the game is won or lost. Mobility, maneuvering, positioning your troops, being in the right place at the right time is the key to winning these games. For me personally, find D20-based combat far more interesting when it is maneuvering and mobility heavy than when it's how do we just maximize the highest possible bonus to hit while we just stand there like, I don't know, Revolutionary War armies and just trade volley with each other. So again, now that's not to say, by the way, I say that, you know, artillery have low hit points and low defense. We'll talk about this later, but this can also be where things like terrain make a big deal. or make a big difference. This is also a really great opportunity, I might add, for your ranged characters to shine, for your bow wielders and for your spellcasters who do have a higher, spells with a higher range. This is also a great example of where you can kind of fix some of the problems in Pathfinder 2 by changing the nature of the foes. So if you take something like, for example, spell attack spells, we know that these do a fair amount of damage, but we also know that their accuracy is very bad because of the, proficiency limitations. But if a caster is casting one of these spells against this low hit point, low armor class artillery monster, and you've structured and created this situation in such a way that the spellcaster actually has a really good chance of hitting this creature, maybe even has a higher than 5% chance of critting, then the spellcaster is going to feel really rewarded for having some of those spells in their repertoire. If your spellcasters are only ever going up against creatures that have high AC, extreme AC for a PL +2 monster, then yeah, spell attacks are going to suck because they're never going to hit those things. In fact, most people are never going to hit those things. So that is our artillery monsters. Okay. Let me catch up with the chat here really quick. Knockdown is good. I hate improved knockdown though. Feels really bad from the player side to get screwed by free action. I like soldier abilities like Pack Attack, where they get the bonus if they have buddies nearby, reduces the number of soldiers. So Boothby, actually, I do not like Pack Attack for soldiers, and we'll actually talk about that in a second. But I do not like it for soldiers. I don't want soldiers really to be doing damage unless you are trying to get away from them. Like if it was up to me, I would design a mechanic where like soldiers did a pathetic amount of damage, but like on an attack of opportunity, they got like plus 10 damage or something like that, right? I want moving away from them. I want their controlling abilities to be powerful. One of the problems with Pathfinder 2 and Pathfinder 1 and 3rd edition D&D is a lot of the stickiness of attack of opportunity is directly related to how much damage you can do with that attack of opportunity. How much of a threat is that attack of opportunity? And so it's this weird situation where a barbarian who is raging, who took attack of opportunity at level 6, and they have this massive damage bonus, is weirdly better at doing attack of opportunity than, say, the shield sword and board fighter or sword and board champion, because even though they have attack of opportunity, or the champion took attack of opportunity, what really makes attack of opportunity scary is the damage. And if you're it's just 2d8 plus 4, I don't even care if you hit, it kind of loses some of its sting. Whereas the barbarian, you go, yikes, that's 2d12 plus 12. I feel like I'm going to get punished if I let this guy make a free attack. And so there's this weird problem that we have to overcome because attack of opportunity being effectiveness or efficacy or fear or effectiveness even as a movement denying thing needs to be addressed. Oh, also, I want to point out something here. In my world, in Pathfinder 2, the only thing that will have attack of opportunity is a soldier. And 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to let you know that this is a soldier. He's threatening you. You're within his reach. He has some attack of opportunity, or he has some sort of reaction. I want you to know that. Like, I want to encourage mobility, not discourage it. And I don't want to punish people with gotchas. Again, I want people to be able to make decisions. And in order to make decisions, players have to have the ability, and they also have to have the knowledge of what they can do, what are the consequences if I don't do or do something, and then they can make real choices and real decisions. Ben says, divorcing spell mechanics from spell-like effects is the way. Otherwise, it's too slow from the GM side. 100% agree with Ben. I'm not going through... I'm not taking a spell list from the player's handbook or the core rulebook and sticking it onto a 14th level monster, and that I'm going to play once. And I'm going to expect that I'm going to even know what any of these things do or whatever. Gross. Okay. Sorry, getting caught up here. Always kill the wizard first. Are these towers for one group and DM, or are they for multiple groups and DMs to coordinate their ascent and complete the tower simultaneously? That might work for Northern Regions. Ian, the idea is that, well, I am going to be running them. I suppose if I created them completely, another GM could run them. But the idea, Ian, is that, yes, different groups could come at different times over the next couple of weeks and attempt to take out the different spires until one group feels like they are ready to try to take on the Grand Master of the tower, Helios, and try to take him out. So that is the idea here. Man, I feel like high AC is a big trap for people to use in monster rules. You should only be using it on monsters like soldiers. I agree. I agree. Agreed. 100% agreed. AOO feels bad when you didn't expect it, and it crits, stopping your big spell from going off. But when you take the risk trying to cast a spell, knowing about the AOO is cool. Yes. Again, I like for people to be informed and knowledgeable, and I want these characters to be able to make those decisions. All right. Moving on. This is just getting a baseline started, people. I apologize, but we'll get through this. I promise. Because I do want to answer Rick S's question. I won't forget about you, Rick. Okay. So we've got our soldier. We've got our artillery. Let's go to another type of damage dealer. Okay. That is the brute. Okay. Which I use a B for. Okay. What's a brute? High hit points. Okay. Low defenses. This is the monster. I'm not saying this is the gelatinous cube or the zombie, but this is the monster where, look, your arrows aren't going to cut it, right? This is the monster where you want to, this thing could take a ton of damage. You're going to hit. It's almost fun to fight these monsters sometimes because they are just such a bank of hit points. They have low defenses, low armor class. They're easy to mess up. They might have a high fort. This is still Pathfinder 2. I still think it's okay to have, one save that's better than the other ones. And they are typically going to have high damage. Okay. But their accuracy is going to be, low to medium. And I mean, some of these are following the Pathfinder 2, rules and curriculum. Like if you have extreme damage, maybe you have low accuracy. But if you have high damage, then you should have maybe medium accuracy or medium to attack. I also typically like to give brutes some form of what I'll call, I'll call it AOE close range, right? I want brutes because, again, what are we trying to do here, people? We're trying to create incentives and disincentives. I just told you brutes have a lot of hit points. Range attacks, they don't get to add strength bonus to damage. Wow, okay. So what's the best thing to do? Low armor class, high hit points. Let's surround this guy with a bunch of our heavy hitters, and we will just, we'll flank him, and with his low armor class, now it's even lower, we will just hit, crit, we'll just melt his hit points into the ground. So the incentive is for the player group to crowd around this guy. So what we do is we complicate that, and we give these brute creatures some sort of ability to take advantage of that. Okay? The big club swing. The earth elemental takes both of its hands or fists and slams them into a ground, and it's a point blank shockwave that ripples out from it. Not 40 feet that hits everybody. No, just like 10 feet or 15 feet. Just enough to punish and penalize those people who said, let's surround this creature. Because now suddenly you go, well, if we all surround the creature, then we're all going to get hit with that really nasty AoE. Okay, well, we'll just send one person in then. Okay, but the guy has a ton of hit points, so one person probably isn't going to be able to get through all of that hit points. And it's like, oh, yeah. Okay, so how do we deal with this thing? And then the answer should be, I don't know. Like as a GM and as a group, you are going to have to look at the situation. You're going to have to look at your characters. There's so many different combinations of 4 and 5 and 6 person parties in Pathfinder 2. You have no idea what you're going to end up with. But the challenge is going to be to the party, how do we defeat this threat, this type of threat? And again, a brute could be a big ogre, it could be a giant, but it could also be an earth elemental, it could be an ooze. If it's a demon or a devil, it's probably like a What are those things called? Barlgura, like the big lurking, huge demon. Is this a cheetah? No. But is this like an elephant or a gorilla? Yes. So again, for me, brutes are pretty simple. And they sort of fall, they're kind of in between. They're like an artillery, but you'll notice in my world here, our artillery are doing high damage and they have a high attack roll. The brutes do not. That's because the brutes get this huge, massive bank of hit points. And so, there's sort of a trade-off here. Brutes, left to their own devices, are going to do a lot of damage. Now, their attack roll isn't as high as an artillery. An artillery is a threat to your full plate wearers. An artillery is a threat to your wizards, for sure. But, an artillery is somebody who can 0 map attack and hit your champion, and then -5 map attack, hit your wizard. The brute is, a big lumbering kind of idiot. They're more of a threat to your 6 hit point low AC and maybe your 8 hit point lower AC type classes. This is a great class for that high AC fighter because it's going to miss. And that's why this AoE close range, I love to attack the fort or the reflex. Right? Because you're changing it up on them. You're giving them something else to contend with. And maybe if the players understand the play pattern, they go, okay, I get it. If there's 3 of us around the brute, he's going to do his AoE, and then me raising my shield is kind of pointless. But if it's just me and I raise my shield, he's not going to AoE, so he's going to attack me, but my armor class is high, so he might miss, right? So this is kind of the idea of the play pattern that we're kind of creating here. All right. Now, yes. Derek, is this all from 4th edition? No. I mean, these ideas were originally created in this 3rd edition book called Dungeonscape, but this has been something that's been around in D&D since, I would say, the early days of 3rd edition for sure, when they sort of codified monsters into different types. But a lot of it is, this is how I've been running and using games for a very, very long time. And even other games, which are sort of 4th edition derived, like this one here, 13th Age, uses similar ideas of monster rolls. And so all of these are sort of an amalgamation of years of using these concepts. All right, we've got our soldiers, S, we got our artillery, A, we got our brute, B. So let's get into another damage dealer. Now you might be saying, Derek, there seems to be a lot of creatures that deal damage. Well, yes. Why? Because hit points are the tension mechanic of our game. Now that doesn't mean that creatures like the soldier or the artillery or the brute can't necessarily inflict some sort of condition or debuff or penalty. But generally speaking, hit points are the language that we are using. They're the way that we modify and sort of measure, tension in a D20 game. And so a lot of times we're going to end up using these. All right. So Lurker, this is our next one. Okay. I use an L for lurkers. Lurkers are going to be what I would call hit and run tactics. They are mobile. They are slippery. They are probably somewhere in this sort of, they're in the low AC, but they have high defenses. Okay. They are the one big attack and then slip away type creature. A lurker is this creature that moves in and deals a tremendous amount of damage and then turns invisible and, fades away and comes back in a round or 2. A lurker is not a creature. If a lurker can be closed up and attacked in, if you could just wail onto it, it's going to go down really, really slow. It's going to go, really, really, really quickly. When I say high defenses for the lurker, I mean things like, invisibility or concealment or stealth. The fun of this monster is it gives the party something else to do besides just, attack what we know, attack what we can see. The lurker changes up the math a little bit. It's going to require your party to think about the threats they can't see, the threats that may yet be, to appear. Lurkers are really, really fun to run as sort of a one of. Now, again, this is not, lurkers aren't the type of character that they're going to come in here invisible. When I think lurker, a lot of people think, oh, you mean like a rogue? No, not really. If you're familiar with first edition D&D, think first edition AD&D thief. Okay? Don't think rogue. All right? In first edition D&D, a thief could backstab for like ×3, ×4, ×5 damage. But typically, they were sort of one and done. They could only do it once a fight, because once the jig was up, they were kind of, shit out of luck. Don't think modern day sneak attack. The lurker is not somebody who sits there and gets on a flank and just goes and does a bunch of damage. The lurker is a creature that sort of hits and runs, because their powerful attack usually exposes them and makes them not invisible, or it makes them weak, or it makes them vulnerable. And then they have to have something that lets them sort of regain their defensiveness while they move away. And so part of the challenge of beating a lurker is to sort of be able to time it, break through their issue, break through their defense of whether it's invisibility, concealment, and stealth. I also mentioned that they could be mobile. Sometimes a lurker might just be really, really quick. And they come in, they move in, they stride, they move in one stride, but it's like a 50-foot stride. A monk might even be something like a lurker, right? You have a vulnerable target in your back rank, right? The party has a vulnerable target in their back rank, a mage, low hit points, low armor class, no shield raised. You've got this monk, this, evil drow monk, and it's set up as a lurker. It's got a movement, 60 feet. One action, boom, it's in melee. Second action, boom, boom, flurry of blows. Both hits, because against the low armor class. Boom, boom, a lot of damage. Third action, 60 foot back, around a corner, back behind a tapestry, to the other side of the room, right? So you're like, okay, that guy just kind of came in, did his stuff, got out. Wow, holy crap. That was crazy. If you can nail the creature down, it'll splatter like goo. But if it's gonna be able to keep doing its tricksy, highly mobile stuff, you're gonna find yourself in trouble. Again, lurkers aren't always the biggest threat to some of the high AC classes, but they can break through occasionally. And what I would say is in Pathfinder 2 language, for them, I would really focus on flat-footed. And in fact, actually, I'll just write this out. Flat-footed. I would have lurkers have, now again, I mentioned sneak attack. I know that sneak attack works against flat-footed, but I'm thinking even above and beyond that. I would really focus on having these creatures do their damage if the target is flat-footed, if they're one of these sneaky, tricksy type creatures, because that is something that other classes can play around with. Like, for example, if a lower level lurker comes from behind a barbarian, well, the barbarian has uncanny dodge, and so they say, oh, hey, look, I'm not flat-footed, I'm fine with this. So again, I think that's one way to play lurkers. The other way I think to play workers is, again, with this highly mobile tactic. Again, remember the idea here too, you're not going to have one creature in this battlefield. I try to design my battlefields to have anywhere between 3 to 5 creatures. You want the party to be like, man, dealing with this lurker should be a priority for us, but we've got other things to deal with. And as long as the party's feeling like, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do, then you're doing a good job, because they're going to figure it out. And if you're using standard Pathfinder 2 math, the numbers are on their advantage. But the fun and the challenge of it is, can they figure this out before, they run out of time and hit points? All right. So we've got our soldier, our artillery, our brute, our lurker. All right. Our next creature is sort of our last damage dealer. And they are what I would call the most generic creature. And they are the skirmisher, which I abbreviate with a K. And they are the Mario in Mario Kart okay? They are basically all around skirmishers. You know, they're like your average, totally reasonable average combatant. They totally have a reason for being here. So they're kind of, you know, average in offense and sort of average in defense, right? Skirmishers are typically something that, don't need a whole lot of tricks or bags of whistles. They're kind of a generic combatant. The one thing that I do like to do for skirmishers is I typically like to give them solid mobility. And the reason why I want to give them solid mobility is because I really want skirmishers to flank. Remember how I said the lurker was like the first edition thief? Okay, the skirmisher is more like your rogue. They're a solid combatant, but they're really on their best when they're flanking, or I would say that they are ganging up. So going back to before about wanting to give the soldiers this sort of ganging up, or I can't remember what you called it, pack tactics. That is something that I would save for skirmishers. The whole idea of a skirmisher is if a skirmisher is in a one-on-one fight with you, you're probably okay. Skirmisher's goal is to, when you are engaged with another creature, a brute or a soldier, the skirmisher is going to come in and get engaged as well. They are going to set up their opponent. They are going to set up their ally. They are going to be able to do some extra some extra damage. Maybe they have, a 1d6 sneak attack. But they're not doing it from hiding like the lurker, like the traditional thief of RPGs. No, they're doing this like a standard rogue. They're standing out in the open. You're just flanked, and they're attacking you. And again, they're doing a reasonable amount of damage. They have a reasonable amount of armor class. Their whole thing here is they're not the biggest threat, but they also don't have the sort of glaring weaknesses that other creatures have. And I also like the idea of them being sort of an enabler, that they are sort of setting other people up with like things like flanking and maybe aiding and ganging up on creatures and pack tactics and maybe some other abilities that can really help out the other people in the fight. They're kind of a firefighter that kind of runs around the fight to wherever there's an opportunity for them to sort of, pounce upon a weakened or down foe. All right. And then we have two more. We have the controller. Okay. Which is a C. There we go. All right. The controller is all about, you guessed it, support. And I should say, actually, I shouldn't even call it support. I should really call it debuffs and AoEs. All right. The controller is going to have average hit points and defenses. They're not as frail as an artillery, but they're not beefy and super strong either. If the artillery is sort of long, here are the PCs. If the artillery is sort of long range and the brutes and the soldiers, are here at close range, the controller kind of lives at what I would call, the controller kind of lives at what I would call medium range, right? The controller is going to have a lot of 30-foot ranged spells or 30-foot ranged abilities. The controller is going to be here to, again, make it so that the party is not able to complete their game plan. The controller is going to be there in order to put a debuff on you or to lock someone down with an immobilize so that you can't go and engage the artillery or the lurker. Or you're going to be fighting a brute and it's going to hit you, the controller is going to hit you with an armor class penalty, which suddenly is going to make it so that the brute is essentially hitting you almost every time with that high amount of damage. The controller themselves is not a damage dealer. If they do, it's in the form of AoE. But oftentimes, the threat of a controller is in weakening and attacking your game plan. And they are going to disrupt you, and they are going to mess with you. And that means conditions. I mean, we know, in Pathfinder 2, that means conditions. That means slowed. That means frightened, right? It doesn't even have to be magical. You could design a creature that's just kind of, you can make it up. You can make up whatever you want. You could design a creature that's all around intimidation and scaring people and fear auras, and they just put out a bunch of frightened auras out everywhere, and then maybe you give them an immobilized ability with the fear tag, and you say that, like, if someone has a high enough frightened value, they become immobilized because they're paralyzed, or well, that would be paralyzed, but they're immobilized with fear. They're frozen in fear. This controller, you go, wow, this guy's not really doing any damage, but we kind of want to kill him anyways. But if we're attacking the controller, then we're not attacking the artillery or the lurker or the brute. And those creatures are doing a ton of damage to us. So what do we do? And you're like, well, we need to attack the controller first. It's like, yeah, but do we? See, part of the problem with Pathfinder 2 is since everything does damage and does a lot of damage, like, it doesn't really matter what you fight. You just fight the thing that's doing the most damage. This is trying to get away from that. This is trying to break that up. All right, the last type of creature is called the leader. This is the buffer. This could be, I don't recommend using this often, if ever. This is like the healer. This is the support. This is the NPC bard. The leader is kind of like the opposite to the controller. The leader is there to enhance and support the abilities of the NPC party. They themselves aren't the most powerful threat, but when they are alive, they can, they're a force multiplier, and they can make the enemy have a lot more strength and power than they would otherwise have. And so again, you're sort of stuck in a situation where you go, well, which one should we attack? The leader or the ones that they are leading? And there's not always a great answer to it. Now, one of the things that you'll notice, though, is that something like a leader is obviously going to be very useless if your encounter consists of two monsters. And quite frankly, and quite rightly, you would not use some of these roles if they were by themselves. An artillery is great, but they need other creatures in the combat so that there is some sort of barrier or obstacle between them and the party. Otherwise, the party's just going to easily walk over and kill them. The challenge of an artillery monster is, how do we get to these creatures? How do we lock them down? How do we put them down? If you're just using artillery monsters, same thing with soldiers. If you have an encounter with just a bunch of low damage, high AC monsters, that's going to be so boring. You're going to say, we were never in a threat at all. Why would we ever use this? The only monsters which I think are okay to use solo are really like the brute and maybe the controller, maybe the skirmisher. But even then, the skirmisher is all about ganging up. So I tend to try to, these ideas here are kind of like building your equivalent of your monster party, right? Soldier, artillery, brute, lurker, skirmisher, controller, and leader. Now, I tend to try to keep these roles pretty distinct and different. If you have a really, really important and cool and awesome NPC, important, not just some random person that they've never met before and now they're going to fight them once in an adventure and never encounter them again. Sometimes you can maybe have them wear two hats so they can do double duty. But realize that, in Pathfinder 2, you only have so much time on your turn and you only have so many rounds in a combat to sort of do your thing. All right. So these are our types that we can work with when we're designing an encounter. Now, I'm going to take a stop real quick because I'm going to drink something. But any questions from the chat while we're here? All right. So, Rick had asked, all right, so now we understand what our monster types are, but now we have to have a budget to work with them. Oh, okay, we got a question with Boothby. How much rework are you having to do to get PF2 monsters to fit into the role framework that you just outlined? So when I make a monster in Pathfinder 2, I will typically use the I'll find the appropriate level monster. I will then use the low, average, high, or extreme values for its saves, armor class, attack bonus, damage, hit points. I kind of ignore what the Pathfinder 2 recommendations are, and I sort of fit them within the context that I had just described here. And then I use the same thing for the damage expressions, again, based off of the context of what I just said here for these monsters, right? Where certain things will have high, certain things will have, low. And I sort of establish that as a baseline. For abilities and adding these things, that is where I typically kind of go afield and I go, I use different things. If you watched Rise of the Rune Lords, there was an encounter inside of the Storval Dam where they fought a tribe of trolls. And one of the things I like to do in order to keep things on theme is they fought a lot of trolls in that adventure. They never fought the troll from Pathfinder 2. Every troll was something else. Like there was the one encounter, which took place in the sewer. This is the one where Burl used Wall of Fire really effectively. It was a fight versus 5 trolls. 2 troll bone crushers and 3 troll flesh flingers. They're all trolls, but the troll bone crushers were these big, hulking troll brutes, and the 3 troll flesh flingers were artillery. They would rip chunks of their own flesh off of their body because they're trolls, and then they would hurl these disgusting loogie flesh lobs of their skin, which were covered in, gross acidic ichor, and they would lob them at the party members. And so this fight was basically 2 brutes and 3 artillery. And the brutes, they were bone crushers. They had a sort of, even though they were large, I think I treated them as if they were huge for purposes of being able to stuff people in their mouths. And, their whole shtick was they grapple people, they grab them and they stuff them in their mouth and they bone chew and they chew them up. And then they also had a close range. Let me see if I can pull it up actually let me pull it up. We'll pull it up, but they had like a close range vomit, I think it was called I want to say it was called pre-digestion or something like that. It was probably pretty gross sounding. And again, fitting into this idea that for the brutes, I wanted them to have this ability to sort of, have this close range, point blank, AoE. And that's what was so important to me. So I'm going to load that up in a second. So where I really find that I have to put in a lot of time and effort is with the abilities. Getting the raw numbers across isn't that bad. All right. Just adding controllers and leaders should rarely ever have use it. Just adding controllers and leaders should rarely ever have use and forget about it abilities. Yeah, got it. Yeah, no, that's a great example, Darth Gorlock. And I think we've talked about that before. I mentioned before, as I said, they were like the bard of the ability. I'm a big fan for controllers and for leaders. Let me go back up here to our thing here. I'm a big fan for these type of creatures to use auras or 1-round buffs. Those to me are worth their weight in gold, because now you're clearly identifying this creature is the source of this problem. And guess what? If you can deal with this problem, then you will also deal with the effect, the debuff. Okay. All right. So let me share. Let me share another window with you guys. Okay. So this was from our Rise of the Rune Lords game, and it is definitely on a 4K monitor. Okay, here we go. Great. Cool. Okay, so this was the sewer fight. By the way, you'll notice the scale here of the grid. This is a fairly large thing. Now, of course, right now, these creatures are dead because, the PCs killed them. I lost my mouse. There it is. So when they first came in here, the fight looked something like this. There were two of these bone gnawer trolls, and again, they were coming in from over here, down this stairway. And these guys, I positioned them back just out of like the range of like light, so they wouldn't be immediately seen. And then I think over here, I think I had these, and by the way, okay, I see what I did. I made them actually huge. They're just like big, huge, hulking creatures. And then I made these flesh flinger trolls over here. And they were basically up, on this catwalk that kind of surrounded this whole area. All right. And if we look at the bone gnawer troll, it has its jaws and its claws. And I talk about this a lot on the stream. It does have a reaction, but it is not attack of opportunity. In fact, I called it Voracious Pursuit. And to me, I named it Voracious Pursuit, but I mean, for me, the idea is that, the guy's hungry and he's voracious. He's really hungry. So he chases after his meal. And so Voracious Pursuit, did I even put this in the description? Did I actually type this out? No, I did not. Okay. Voracious Pursuit is the barbarian feat where if a creature tries to move away from this brute, he can use his reaction to move with them. So the idea is that it's hard to get away from this guy. He's not very mobile, but again, he's available to be hit. So then his other one here is called Gnaw and Chew. And you can see that a lot of these are pretty basic because I was just taking notes for myself. So Gnaw and Chew is his constrict ability. He can grab people with his jaws, and then he has this ability to, basically make you grappled. And you're inside of his mouth. And then he has this, Vomitus Predigestion. Let me see if I can expand this a little bit for people at home. So this is the Vomitus Predigestion. It's 2 actions. And it says, and again, by the way, my plan with a monster like this is if it needs to, it strides. Then it strikes with its jaws. And then it grabs them, right? It has the grab here. So it has plus grab. So then you're grabbed by the jaws. Okay, now we have this tension. Because if the guy cannot get out, see, it's all about setting up like these combos. So in my mind, this is the combo, right? The bone gnawer troll moves in with its stride. It then attacks with its jaws, second action, and then uses its third action to grab, which grabs you with the jaw. So it's like got a piece of you. It's got part of your arm in its mouth. Then the next turn, and you telegraph like crazy about the acid dripping off of this creature's mouth, like the digestive enzymes that are pouring out of it. These massive, oversized claws. Maybe there's or jaws. There's maybe a chunk of another, knight or something stuck between its teeth. They get the idea. Okay, if I stay here, this is going to be bad news for me. If the person who got grabbed by the jaws is unable to escape, then you can, on your next turn, you have 3 actions. You're going to do a Gnaw and Chew, which is only 1 action. It does a bunch of damage, no attack roll. They can make a fort save to take less damage, but that could be very, very devastating and attacking. They can even do that multiple times, which would be really powerful. But they can also do this Vomitus Predigestion. which is the troll expels out a wave of corrosive enzymes and stomach acid that deals 8d6 damage in a 15-foot cone. Notice again, it's a short-range cone. A brood is not, this is not cone of cold time. This is just short range. And it's 8d6 acid. It's a fortitude save, and you'll notice that it does some damage. And if you fail, you also get sickened because you're covered in troll throw up. But there's a special here. A creature currently grappled by the troll has their fortitude save worsened by 1 step. So the wombo combo for this creature is it comes in, it bites someone, it grabs them with its mouth, it then gnaws and chews them and bites them up a little bit, and then it vomits out all over everybody, including the person in their mouth who takes a bunch of damage and is now sickened. Right? That's the wombo combo. The idea is I want my players to know that that's it. And that's all this creature does, people. That's all it does. It has nothing else. I mean, it has its regeneration because it's a troll, and which makes its hit points a little lower maybe than they should be. But like, that's it. It's all this creature does. And I want my players to know that. Meanwhile, the flesh flinger trolls here in the back, considerably less hit points, and they have flesh fling, right? They rip out a piece of their flesh, they throw it at somebody, and you take damage and you become sickened. And that's it. They also, I gave them a little bit of a controller power. I gave them this skull peel ability. They can rip off part of their face, and that gives them a bonus to their intimidation check to demoralize, because they're literally ripping off the skin from their skull. All right. Okay. I will say this. I did give this creature too many abilities, because actually, now that I'm looking at it, this creature really is more of a controller, because it had this. This is Dismembering Hurl. The idea of this was that the troll rips off its own arm, throws it like a javelin. The claw gets next to you, starts dealing persistent slashing damage, but it also grabs you and grapples you while it's kind of crawling around and grabbing on you, because, you know, it's a troll arm and they keep living. So actually, this creature kind of actually, now that I'm looking at it, was more of like a controller. But that was the plan. And now the thing is, I'm like, okay, this is going to be really tough, because the party, right? The PCs, here we go, the OGs, you know, the party, oh, that's so sad, because they're all actually dead from the final time we played them. Azius is not, because he went down the chute. But anyways, spoiler alert. I'm thinking, okay, this is good. Well, let's put the spellcaster in the back here. You know, Azius is going to come in here. Esker's going to come in. Oh my gosh, these big guys come in, and they're going to, you know, block up these ramps to the rest of the dungeon. These guys are going to be really, you know, constrained. There's going to be vomitous things. These guys are going to be hurling stuff in there. How are they ever going to beat this? You know, I'm trying to defeat the PCs. The PCs, they won this fight. The sorcerer cast a wall of fire that went basically like all the way over here. And just, not only did it burn these trolls to the ever-living bejesus out of them, but then they couldn't really attack anymore, because there was a big raging wall of fire in their front of their face, and they couldn't see, and they had concealment and hidden, and you know, high-level PCs have a lot of, you know, tricks up their sleeve. So anyways, so getting back to Pathfinder 2, the goal, and to kind of wrap this up, is you have these roles. Now you need to know how to use them. Okay? So this is where encounter design comes in, and this is where the experience budget comes in. So we know that a moderate encounter has 80 XP. And by the way you calculate, we'll get to this in a second. In fact, actually, because so many people use so many different things, we'll actually ignore that. Okay. A moderate encounter is number of PCs times 20 XP. Okay? So a 4-person party times 20 equals 80 experience points. If you put 80 experience points worth of monsters into an encounter, that is a moderate encounter. A severe encounter is number of PCs times 30 XP. So for a 4-person party, a severe encounter gives you a budget of 120 XP. A extreme encounter is extreme is number of PCs times 40 experience. So 4 times 40 is 160 XP. So if you had a 5-person party, then you would be working with 100, 150, and 200 as sort of your bench points, benchmarks. Yes, there are low and trivial, but I don't really use those, and I don't think you should either. They're kind of a waste of everybody's time unless you're just gonna, skip past it and go on to other stuff. Oh, we got a super chat. Oh, from the Thunder Down Under himself, from Self-Confessed Cynic. I love setting up fights in a way that I'm not even sure how they'll be beaten, then watching how the PCs find a way out. Severe plus done right. Yes, exactly. Exactly, Vin. Exactly. 100%. Couldn't agree more. Thank you for the super chat. So we also need to know, now this is in your book, but we also need to understand how a monster's level, now this is Pathfinder 101 for some people, but how a monster's level in comparison to the party's level gives it an XP component, right? So if the monster's level is equal to the party's level, then that monster is worth 40 experience points out of your budget. If the monster level is party level -1, it's 30. If it's party level -2, it's 20. If it's party level +1, it's 60. And if it's party level +2, it's 80. And yes, I'm aware that these numbers go up higher than that. For example, party level +3 is 120, and party level +4 is 160. We put the math on this is related to your party's level. And so if you have a 9th level party, on average, then a 9th level monster is worth 40 experience points, whereas an 8th level monster would be worth 30 experience points, etc., etc. So let's design an encounter. Now, we said before, I thought that these people were going to be around 9th to 10th level. So let's design this one as sort of the easier spire. So let's say that we're going to assume level 9 PCs, and let's assume that we are going to have 5 of them. So that means if we want it, that's 5 PCs. So if we want a moderate fight, we'll go with 100 XP. If we want a severe fight, we'll go with 150 XP. And if we want an extreme fight, we're going to go with 200 XP. Now, I will say that because this is the Northern Reaches, people are playing pretty aggressively. They're playing to win. They have multiple lives. They can actually die and basically respawn back in the town. They lose one of their lives. I am very unlikely to use a moderate encounter. I want my XP totals of my dungeon to probably live in the 140 to 180 range. Okay? That's probably where I want to be. Vin is also making a great point. A monster XP is also equal to a complex hazard XP of the same level. So yes, a complex hazard is also equal to the same thing. A simple hazard is actually equal to, 1/4, 1/5? It's actually ridiculously low. So that means we'll start off here with what we would call a severe encounter for our 5 level 9 PCs. That means we have 150 XP. Now, let me think about this from a perspective of an encounter. This is literally how I design an encounter. I typically think of rooms as existing in one of three basic shapes. I either think of a wide room, I think of a square room, or I think of a long room. And in each instance, I will use this little arrow symbol to sort of represent the general direction from which I expect the PCs to be entering this encounter. So for all intents and purposes, let's use this one here. Let's use our wide room. So we're going to have, I'm imagining a wide chamber. The exact dimensions don't really matter that much. I thought I had auto shape on. Maybe I don't. Oh, there we go. Now we got it. Now we're cooking with gas. All right. So look at that. So we've got our wide room. And okay. And the PCs are coming from this direction. So immediately, what we want to avoid, or what we don't want to have happen, is the classic, the PCs come in, the monsters win initiative, the monsters rush the PCs, and everybody fights right here in the doorway, right? That happens all the time. So right off the bat, I want to give the party a reason to want to move into the room, a reason for them to want to spread out, a reason for them to want to engage with the enemy. Now, we have a wide room here, so let's take advantage of it. Let's put an artillery monster in each of the two corners. This does a couple of interesting things. Number one, it means that if the party all breaks off to go deal with this guy, then they are now going to be at least a turn or maybe even 2 turns away from dealing with this guy. If we put the artillery guys like right next to each other, then the party can basically just kind of go get, 2 birds with 1 stone. So by putting the artillery in opposing corners, we make it so that the party kind of has to, pick and choose, or maybe they have to split up. Secondly, it also means we're taking advantage of the room terrain here. It means that the party can't hit these guys easily with an AoE. So when we're building this room and we're thinking about the dimensions, let's keep in mind the standard dimensions of Pathfinder 2. We know that a 25 to 30 foot range is what most people's speeds are. We know that a fireball is a 40 foot diameter. We know that a lot of multi-target spells require creatures to be within 30 feet of one another. So we want to make sure that this room is wide enough that they can't just fireball and kill everything. This is also a big part of the reason why I think small rooms are bullshit in Pathfinder 2. Their own mechanics encourage you to use something similar and something different. Okay, so we've got our 2 artillery. They are posted up in each of the 2 corners. But now it's too easy, right? Because the party can come in and they can just rush the artillery. They can just deal with the artillery right away. The barbarian and the fighter can just go rush off and attack the artillery monster, no problems whatsoever. So how do we counter that? What type of creature, what type of monster or foe can we put in this room in order to make that not so simple of a tactic? Well, probably not a controller and probably not a skirmisher, but a soldier or a brute could work really, really, really well. Because those creatures demand an answer. The soldier is going to make it so that it's very, very, very tough to maybe close in and get to one of these creatures in time. If the soldier's got you tripped up or grabbed or, otherwise inhibiting your movement, you're going to find yourself in a really tough position. Similarly, you could have a big old brute right here. Now, he doesn't have attack of opportunity, and he doesn't have anything like that. Sorry, B. But if the party just rushes past this brute to go deal with the artillery, well, then this brute is going to have a free lunch to the rest of the party, particularly your softer targets or your easier targets. You're just going to be able to just have a field day and just sort of rush upon it. So there's going to be an incentive for the party to go, look, we can't just leave this brute to ravage through our rear lines. We got to deal with this right now. But if you do that, then the artillery monsters are going to keep pounding and hammering in on you. Now, I said before that, especially for a 5-person party, I like to use somewhere between 3 to 5 monsters. So this is probably a fine way or fine place to stop if we wanted to. But another option, so actually we'll design this really quick, and then I'll sort of show you a second alternative derivative. Okay. By the way, we got a bunch of chat coming in here from Self-Confessed Cynic. For starters, One Hot Llama, welcome. It's good to see you, buddy. I enjoy. Mark was one of our friends at Origins, who we got to meet up with and have a good time with. Always glad to have the llama here in the chat. Awesome. If you're using 3+ monsters, you usually get more mileage out of switching one of those to a complex hazard. So this is something that's a little bit more advanced, and I honestly believe, I will fully admit that someone like Self-Confessed Cynic, and probably even Ben A from the Discord, are better and more comfortable using complex hazards than I am. But I will also fully agree that when you're using multiple monsters, you are going to continue to raise your complexity level as a GM. You're going to have to be running multiple creatures. Now, I try to simplify those stat blocks a lot so that they're easier to run, but generally, it's still going to take more time to run more creatures. It just takes time. Turning them into a hazard can be really, really helpful because number one, it presents a different set of challenges, which is great. And number two, it doesn't take up as much cognitive load or difficulty running it, and it can also speed up your style of gameplay. And Self-Confessed Cynic mentions artillery monsters also make the best candidates to switch to a complex trap, a ranged trap with a control panel or similar mechanism to disable. I also think that I actually think that there's even a better option than the artillery monster. I agree that if you are going to create a creature or if you're going to create a hazard, I think that an artillery is kind of near the top. But I actually think, too, that a controller and a leader are actually maybe even better. And it seems really strange and weird. But, like, imagine if there was, let's say that these were drow. So, I don't know. This is like a drow mage, and this is a drow mage. And, I don't know, this is like a yokel, right? Like a demon from the Abyss, this weird tentacle wax thing. But what if right here there was and I usually use, by the way, circles for creatures and squares for hazards. If I put there's an idol of the Spider Queen of Loth here in the center of the room, and it is sending out waves of dark webbing that skitter around the ground, and each turn it basically sends out a pulse wave that when it hits you can immobilize you. Or maybe it's if you pass your save, your speed is slowed. If you fail your save, you're immobilized. Maybe if you critically fail, you're paralyzed for one round. Not like the rest of the combat. Well, we don't have to deal with this thing. We can just go kill these artillery and this brute without ever dealing with this hazard. We don't have to deal with this hazard, but it might be really difficult, especially if these artillery creatures, of course, it's their dark god. The dark webbing doesn't affect them. And so if we're all really slowed down by this trap, as we're trying to close the distance to this artillery guy, he's not the fastest person in the world, but he just jets over to here. And now we're like, it's going to take us another 2 turns to get there because this stupid dark energy web trap is spending out its energy. But the thief, or I should say the rogue, or somebody else who's trained in such a thing, or maybe a cleric with a religion check can go and defeat that. And then you have an extra advantage that you did not have before. Okay, but so good point, Vin. So going back, though, to what I was talking about before. Let's say I wanted to make this a severe fight. I have 150 XP. That's my budget. Remember, how did I get to 150 XP? Well, it is a severe encounter is the number of PCs times 30 XP. And since I have 5 PCs times 30 XP, I have 150 experience points to play with. Pathfinder 2 says this is a severe fight. And again, I want to probably be somewhere in the 140 to 180 range. So I think 150 is a fine total. Now, how can I spend that 150? Well, I got to spend it on 3 creatures, 1 artillery, 2 artillery, and this brute. And here are my prices. So we can see here that if I want to come in and if I want to make if I want to make the, say, 2 artilleries, and remember, we're level 9. So if I make the 2 artilleries level 8, then that would be party level -1. So that's 30 experience points. So that would cost me 60. And that would leave me 110 left over. Well, I would probably just go with the PL +3, but honestly, I try to avoid these. I think these are too high. I think they're not as much fun. I know some people will disagree with me. I don't like to use creatures that are higher than PL +2. I really like to use a PL +2 monster. So let's make the Brute party level +2. Oh, you said 90 left over. What did I say? Oh, 90. Okay, never mind. I lied. Math is bad. I'm stupid. All right, 60. We have 90 left over. Perfect. Okay, so now we can make the Brute level 10. Perfect. And the Brute at level 2, I'm sorry, if the Brute at level 10 is, I'm sorry, oh gosh, I am really bad at this today. We have a level 9 party, and 2 levels higher than 9 is level 11. There we go. And that is worth 80 experience points. So there we go. We've got 2 artillery monsters at level 8, which is 30 XP apiece, 30 and 30. And then we have a Brute, which is 2 levels higher than the party. That's 80. And that brings us to 140, which is, within our range where we want to go. So this would be an easier fight relative to what we were talking about before, right? And there's not, there's 2 different types of monsters here. And there's clearly a game plan for my monsters. My artillery want to just pour down death and destruction. They want to stay mobile. So if the party moves over to this artillery, that artillery will try to move down here. If the party ends up in this corner, this artillery will probably move down into that corner to try to maximize the distance. And the Brute creature is going to try to smash apart anybody that is left undefeated. Remember, the Brute is high damage, but not super accurate. So the Brute is really looking to be a bully and to pick on those cloth casters, those lower armor class type characters, the ones who don't have as much hit points or don't have as much, armor class. And then the Brute can really make those, really scary for those type of characters. So if the party decides to ignore the Brute and go the big barbarian and the champion and the monk or whatever, decide to go deal with this artillery, then the Brute is going to have a field day with the rest of your party. Now you're like, well, that doesn't seem fair. I promise you, I don't know how to solve this because I don't know what the party will even be. Literally. I mean, I'm running this for potentially one of 70 players. So I have no idea what character classes are going to come in here. But I feel rest assured that the math of Pathfinder 2 is tight, and I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, it is. And despite these tactical challenges, the group will overcome. Now, there's one element left that I want to talk about, but before we wrap up, but I do want to sort of show maybe another example of how this could have gone. Okay, so we have this. We still have our 150 XP budget. Okay, so we have our party coming in from this direction. And let's do this again. Let's do this the same way we did it before. We have an artillery in the corner. We have an artillery in the corner. And instead of a Brute this time, let's make it a soldier. So this soldier is going to be trying to, grab, grapple, trip, keep people from getting to the artilleries. But then, I think about the party. What is the party going to do? Well, the party is going to engage. The soldier is going to try to keep them tied up. But isn't that big of a threat itself? Not the same way the Brute was. But the soldier can be very, very problematic and will likely get people stuck in with him if it's doing its job well. And that's going to make it more difficult for people to go get to the artillery. But it is going to be eventually a reality that people are going to be able to just go around the soldier and attack the artillery. So what if we also added 2 skirmishers on the lower left and lower right side of this fight? Now, if let's say the fighter goes up here and let's say that the monk goes up here, and let's say that the barbarian gets sort of tied up fighting with this soldier, well, then the cleric and maybe the sorcerer who are left here in the back are going to get set upon by our fast-moving, highly mobile, pack tactic type characters of the skirmisher. In fact, because we know that these people technically don't have attacks of opportunity, these skirmishers are probably going to try to, gang up on one character and defeat them quickly. And maybe the skirmishers can even combine with the sorcerer, with the soldier, to make actually a really dangerous, triple threat. And this is also where the classes could be really cool, right? One of the principles of Dungeon World is show a class's strengths, but also show them their downsides. If I set up a situation here where I said, oh, hey, look, this will be great. The skirmisher can go and flank with the soldier, make it much easier to deal with the barbarian. Well, yeah, but if this skirmisher is lower level than the barbarian, then Uncanny Dodge is going to deal with that. Oh, this is my... that was my forge ticking down. Okay, so now we suddenly have this new fight where we have 2 artillery, 1 soldier, and we have 2 skirmishers. So we still have our 150 XP budget, and we know our prices over here, but now we're going to have to make them a little bit lower, right? Because we don't have as much experience points to go with. So let's say that our skirmishers, again, our party is level 9. So let's say that the skirmishers end up being level 7. So the XP for each of them would be 20. And there's 2 of them. So that puts us at 40. So that leaves us 110 experience points left. So now we've got 2 artilleries. Well, we could make them level 8, which would be right here. That's 1 level lower than us. So that's 30 XP each. So that's 60. That puts us at 100. So we have about 50 left, and we could split the difference. We could either go on party level for 40, or let's just go PL plus 1. So we'll have a level 10 soldier, and he'll be worth 60 experience points. And we end up with a 160 XP fight. And again, our goal was to create a 150 XP fight. And now we have a fight with 5 different monsters, 2 artillery, a soldier, and 2 skirmishers. And each of them has a job that they want to do in this fight. And then they can deal with, and that they can, potentially attack with and use to their advantage. The players are going to have to disrupt that strategy, but the monsters are going to do their best to power through. So, in a nutshell, what I said before, I use this methodology to create encounter templates all the time, because you'll notice I gave these things levels here, but I didn't have to. Okay, I could have just said artillery -1 +1 -2. Now, as long as I am talking about a 5 PC party, so maybe like I know that my party's, if I'm playing at home, I know that my party is 5 players. I can use this template, which I just created here, this, very basic encounter template, right? Which is a wide room with an artillery in the corner and an artillery in a corner and a skirmisher in the close corners and a soldier in the middle, and the party is coming up from the middle. Okay? But I could use this for a level 20 party. I could use this for a level 10 party. I could use this for a level 5 party, because all I have to do is just plug in these variables to come up with the new form of their creature. And that once I've created this template, I don't know, I could give it a name, this is this is Indigo Charlie. I don't know. I'm just giving it some stupid name or something. I can save this, and now I could reuse this sometimes even multiple times per campaign. maybe not multiple times per the same dungeon or the same adventure, but the party could encounter this exact encounter 3 or 4 times over the course of a campaign, even if it's like a 10-level campaign. And I would just change out what the creatures are. At low level, when they were fighting, I don't know, against goblins, maybe, these were goblin archers, and in the corner were goblin rogues, and the soldier was, a goblin iron sworn. And then 5 or 6 levels later, these were, orcish spear throwers or orcish flame callers, and the soldier was like an orcish, warrior born, and then the skirmishers were like orcish raiders. And then at 15th level, these could be stone giants. This could be these are stone giants, rock hurlers, and these are stone giant, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, but skirmishers. My point is, I could use this template for all sorts of levels in the game. And all I have to do is say, okay, what's my party level? Okay, well, I know I need 2 artilleries that are 1 level lower than the party. I need 1 soldier that's 1 level higher than the party. And I need 2 skirmishers, which are 2 levels lower than the party. And I can just use this template again and again and again. And eventually I would just sit there in meetings and I would just sketch these out in a notebook I had, just fun, different ideas. Now, what I didn't touch upon today is the idea that the other thing that you want to consider when you're building these things is terrain. Okay. And I usually think of terrain in kind of 5 different ways. I think of terrain as the easiest is just difficult terrain. Okay. Let me write that out actually. Is difficult terrain. So this is terrain that just takes more squares to move. That's easy one. The other type of terrain that I like to think about is, I usually draw it like this, is I call it hazardous terrain. So hazardous terrain can do damage to you. It's, lava, it's fire, it's steam. It's something that is usually involving a check or some sort of problem or some sort of thing for you to overcome. Then I also think about blocking terrain. Blocking terrain blocks line of sight. Okay. A pillar, a boulder if you're outside. So like, you think about this, encounter here and you think about, well, okay, what if there was like difficult terrain here and difficult terrain here, or better yet, here, let me just actually draw it like this, right? Like maybe it's, goodness gracious. Maybe it looks like this. So I don't, maybe these are pools of water, or maybe it's, overgrown hedge. It doesn't matter. It depends on the environment that we're in. This complicates this whole encounter because now, remember, the whole thing that the artillery monsters want is for you to go really freaking slow through this whole procedure. Well, now, if you just take the straight line path to our artillery monster, you're going to be in for a world of hurt because you're going to go right through this difficult terrain and it's going to take you forever. And you're like, okay, well, I'll go around the difficult terrain. Well, then you're going right through our soldier monster, which is exactly what the soldier monster wants. Or you could cut left and try to go through this way, which is probably better. But you're still going to have to deal with our skirmisher at least. And the artillery monster might have time to cut right and get, position themselves centrally so that even by the time you defeat the skirmish monster, now you're in a similar situation as to where you were before. Also, if you do that, you're leaving the main, party line vulnerable to this soldier who doesn't do a lot of damage, but to your weak cloth casters, it might be a lot of damage. So terrain is a great way to, make things difficult for your party without, fundamentally, adding more complexity to the fight in the form of more monsters and more actions that you have to deal with. Similarly, though, be aware that if you set the terrain, and also most of the time, this is the creature's home turf. They're going to have home field advantage. It makes sense that they would be positioned in such a way that is advantageous to them. Even natural low intelligence creatures, leopards still, find locations where they can ambush their prey effectively. So creatures are going to find ways to magnify their strengths and use them against us. But it also makes the game, the tactical element of the game, which I think is important to a lot of us, and I think it is an important part of Pathfinder 2. I think it makes it really, really important as well. Now, you can't go too overboard. If you go too overboard, now you're making the fight harder maybe than it should be. And there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I spent 160 XP on this fight, but if the PCs beat it, I'm going to award them 170, or I'm going to award them 180 XP. Why? Because I think that I constructed enough advantages for the bad guys to warrant a little bit of extra difficulty. And the other thing that I think is so important about this is this fight on paper may very well be 160 XP. And we said before that for a party of 5, 150 is severe. 200 is extreme, which gives you a real chance that someone might die. And 100 XP is a moderate encounter, which quite frankly, no one should really ever die. I firmly and strongly believe that if the party makes wise tactical decisions, this whole battlefield is like a puzzle. Okay, this is the game space. This is the game board that we are going to be playing. And the players are going to have to use their actions, their resources, in order to manipulate this game board, this game space, in a way that's advantageous to them, that works for their party. It's like a puzzle. And if the party can figure out a way to solve this puzzle effectively, they're still going to get their 160 XP. But if they do it well, and they not just roll well, not just I buff my attack bonus to the sky, but if they make the right decisions and they engage tactically the correct way, then they're going to feel like this encounter maybe wasn't 150 XP. They're going to be like, or 160 XP. They're going to say, this felt more like a 100 XP fight, or maybe a 120 XP fight, because we made really good decisions. If you have, I don't know, a magus, remember, look at this fight. Soldier doesn't really do damage. The skirmishers do okay damage, but only if they can gang up. The artilleries are going to be doing the most damage. If the first round, I don't know, the wizard figures out a way to dimension door the barbarian into melee with one of the artillery creatures, and the artillery creature basically dies in the first round, or maybe dies in the second round, having only gotten off one shot in the whole fight. Boom! The fight is going to feel way, way easier. Now, as a game master, I'm not trying to stop that behavior. I am sitting there giggling. I'm like, oh my God, that was so awesome. I didn't see that coming at all. And the player is going to feel like they got away with something. And they didn't. They didn't cheat. You weren't fudging as a GM. You designed this fair and square. In fact, you could argue the odds were stacked against them. But the party has such a rich, deep well of abilities to draw from that they can surprise you. And well, they can kind of screw over your fight, and that's okay. That's what PCs do. But at the same time, if they make bad tactical decisions and they just try to brute force their way through it, and they say, yeah, okay, well, screw that. I'm just going to go deal with the soldier because it's the highest level and it's the biggest threat. And, the 2 or 3 main people in the party are sitting here wailing into a high AC, shield-raised soldier. Meanwhile, the 2 skirmishers have flanked in from the sides. They're eating up the wizards and the sorcerers and the clerics. The artillery are just shooting in massive damage bursts, picking off weak targets, killing off your cloth casters, maybe even bringing some of your high AC, high hit point creature characters down. Then this fight is going to feel more like it's going to be an extreme fight. And it's not because of dice rolls, and it's not because of the math of the game. It's because of the bad decisions that the players made in how to engage it. And so ultimately, I think this style of design and encounter design rewards player decision making. And so to do that, you need to be able to, one, make sure that you are creating encounters that work within the framework of what Pathfinder 2 works. Meaning, this artillery guy's hard to get to because he's flying or he's up on a high battle stool. Cool. Well, we know that characters of a certain level have access to flying. So maybe don't do that when the party is like level 2 because they don't have access to flying. But if the party's level 7 or 9, well, they probably have access to flying. And so now that could be a good solution. Well, what if we don't have flying? Well, maybe someone took a bunch of skill feats in athletics so they can climb really well. Or maybe somebody like a monk has wall run or something equally absurd. Maybe a druid can polymorph and spider. I don't know. There's a million different ways. It's Pathfinder 2. They're going to figure out a way to do it, and that's going to make them feel like, wow, the actions we took are what made the difference here. Not the math, not the numbers on our character sheet, and certainly not what we decided, last week or last month when we leveled up and we built our character and I chose my feat. No, like it was the tactical decisions that we made in this fight that really won it for us. All right. So that's kind of my approach to designing encounters. Hey, what's up, Law? Lol. We just finished up, Lol. We were just talking about role-based encounter design. So sort of as a TLDR, you've got 7 types of monsters to consider. Soldier, artillery, brute, lurker, skirmisher, controller, leader. My dream would be to create a bestiary of Pathfinder 2 monsters that used these role-based designs. So, unfortunately, I know what you're thinking, but Derek, these roles don't exist in Pathfinder 2. That is correct. You are going to have to sort of improvise. You're going to have to make them up. You're going to have to modify and change some of the best monsters in the bestiary. Yet another reason why sometimes I prefer playing at the tabletop is because, when you're playing with Foundry, the siren's call of just being able to drag the monster in from the compendium is pretty dang high. And so it could be really, really tempting to just go and run with that. But certainly I would love to create monsters that I think fill these roles better. I think ultimately it is more fun for the players, and I think it is ultimately more fun for the game master as well. I'll tell you this. In 4th edition and in a game like 13th Age, which uses a very similar encounter design system, I love creating these encounter maps, these encounter templates. I love thinking of the different ways that this combination of roles, either as monstrous foes or as complex hazards, can ultimately, sort of affect the party members. We were talking about hazards as well. Imagine if in this scenario here, you had a little bit of XP left in your budget. So not a complex hazard, but imagine if you put a simple hazard here. Maybe I'm putting L for like a lurker. Maybe it's like a hidden pit trap or a hidden spike trap. And so, if somebody goes, okay, I don't want to go through the soldier, I don't want to go through the difficult terrain, I'm going to try to power past the skirmisher and make my way up to the artillery, and boom, you get hit with a trap. Just another cool way that you can add traps and stuff like that into your combat encounter and into your design. Just really, really fun stuff. Big fan. All right. Well, it was supposed to be sort of a kind of a referendum on all things TTRPGs, but we ended up talking about encounter design a bunch, which is not a bad thing. Goodness knows I need to continue to work on this. Maybe we'll do some sort of follow-up session where we keep working on that stuff. Hey, we picked up 2 new subs. Welcome, Amir. Welcome, Zach. Glad to see you. We've got, it sounds like a good idea for season 2 of Northern Reaches. Yeah, listen, there's a million things I'd love to do with this group, and by this group I mean this Patreon, and really leverage the incredible talent of people that we have in there. And by the way, I said at the beginning of the stream, I will say it again, these kind of conversations, this kind of level of RPG dialogue, that's what Knights of Last Call Patreon is all about. It's about a group of 260 really, really passionate people about role-playing games. It's not a public Discord. It's a private Discord just for the patrons. And these folks are very passionate about role-playing games. They're as passionate, if not more passionate about them than I am. And I get to talk to them each and every day. And so can you. And I really think that if you're interested in having open, non-echo chamber dialogue conversations with people about role-playing games, of bouncing your ideas off of very talented, very, very, very professional, very skilled people, our Discord is the best in the biz. And that's available through our Patreon. So patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. check it out. We have a very cheap tier that just gets you into the Discord, but you can also pay a few dollars more and get access to some of our bonus content, behind the scenes footage, bonus videos. Every time we release a video, we release a bonus video that's only available to our knights. And we also do a monthly magazine, and that is called Battle Cry. And it's where we write down some of our ideas, some of our house rules, some of our philosophical musings, some of our advice, and we publish that, and that's available to our champion tier members. And while Northern Reaches is closed right now, you'll see that Lyle just mentioned Season 2 for Northern Reaches starts next year, and being a higher tier member of the Patreon will get you access to that. That's our huge, massive, multi-GM, multiplayer sort of community Pathfinder 2 game. It's pretty cool. But definitely think you should check that out because, this is just the beginning. I really think the Patreon has put me into contact with some incredible game design minds. And, I'd love to see what we're going to be able to do with this because, we can, as a community, if they're not going to build it for us, well, then we'll build it for ourselves. And that's okay. If the only people who use it are us, I think the 200 plus of us who participate would be fine with that because we're like, that's okay. We don't need anybody else to use it, just us. All right. Well, tips won out. I don't know if that's because they were tips or because that's what actually people wanted to vote for. But so we'll probably do a couple more non-D20 videos here, maybe over the next couple of weeks. Next week, this Thursday, I don't know what we're doing this Thursday. We got to do something. But because the class tier is over. We finished that one up. But next Tuesday, the 25th, that's going to be our Fistful of Flowers AP. So that's a one-shot. Bob is going to be jamming. I'm going to be playing. Smith's going to be playing. I was forced to wear a costume. I'm going to be wearing a costume. We're going to be playing as Leshies. I'm going to be playing Popcorn, who is a Flower Leshy barbarian dragon instinct, who wields a war flail or dire flail made of human skulls. Nice. And of course we're going to be busy getting ready to go and move into our studio, which again, I got some updates for our patrons there, but we have been revamping and rebuilding our studio to be better than ever, and we're really looking forward to getting in there and doing some of these things, not just live but live in person. So me and Bob and Aaron, taking your chats, taking your calls on the air live. And we're all going to be sitting together, and I think it'll just be a really, really cool, positive energy, and I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah. So any final thoughts? Any final questions from the chat? Please let me know if you have any ideas or thoughts. It's interesting how YouTube works. It's like, we, and again, not complaining in the slightest, but like, man, we do like spell ranking, class tier ranking. I mean, I know we got our patrons in here every stream, but like you will get 50 or 60 other people in here. We'll get 100 people, 200, I think we get 120 or something for the one class rank stream. But like you talk about like how to be a better GM. You talk about like how to like develop your skill and build encounters and build dungeons. And like, we're lucky if we can get 40. 45. It's just funny. It really is crazy how the YouTube algorithm works and how people. It's not like those other streams are short. Hell, they're 4 hours long. They're not a short stream. They're not a short stream. So, these ones are oftentimes shorter by comparison. And I got to be honest with you. Sometimes I'm like, is that all that the community wants? Obviously I work at the pleasure of my patrons, and ultimately what they want is what I do. But I got to be honest with you. Sometimes I wonder what the, Boothby, you're probably right. Too few GMs in the world. Player content reigns supreme. You're probably 100% correct. That's because your advice doesn't reinforce the current day fudge to tell your story narrative. That's definitely part of it. I mean, I definitely think that, the way that I talk about game mastering, the way that I talk about role-playing games is very different than the way that a lot of people talk about role-playing games. I certainly have I won't say it's unique in the creator space, but it's definitely not as popular. And that's one of the reasons why I think that our community is as strong as it is, because, the people who sign up for the Knights of Last Call Patreon are doing so either because something resonates with them and they say, this makes sense to me, or they think it's ludicrous, but they're curious. And to me, curiosity about this hobby is, for me, the sexiest thing. That to me is what says, hey, this is somebody I want to game with. This is somebody I want to talk with. This is somebody I want to bounce ideas against. Because if you're curious and you want to learn more, then you're the best person to be, having these conversations with, because you're legitimately interested in changing your ideas, changing your paradigms, breaking down walls, learning and pushing your boundaries, pushing your boundaries. And again, you might come away with it and say, oh, okay, I learned something very valuable. I don't like that game. I don't like that style of game, but at least you'll have that education. It's kind of like college, like a lot of people say, what's the value of a liberal arts education? Well, a lot of times it's just exposure. It's exposure to different ideas, different ways of thinking, different philosophies, different fields of study. And I think that makes you a better person. And I also think it makes you a better role player, but I also think it definitely makes you a better game master. So, yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, that is going to be it for me tonight, folks. Thank you for hanging out with me. If you're watching on the VOD, like and subscribe. That link to that awesome Patreon, it's in the thing below. You can check that out. Thursday, so 2 days from now, we'll be back with some kind of live stream. I don't know what we're going to do. We'll probably ask the patrons and see what they want to do. And yeah, look forward to more, non-D20 videos. We did 3 videos on Legends of the Five Rings. We did a video on Root. We still need to do more videos on Root. That Damien is pushing for a World of Darkness video. So I definitely think we'll produce another couple of those as we kind of move forward. But and then of course more stuff about Pathfinder 2 and about role-playing games in general and the philosophy and all that other stuff. Oh, I still need to do a Blaze in the Dark video too. Darth, can we be honest? Can we take a moment back? It would take me, as much as I love Blaze in the Dark and I love John Harper, it would take me at least 3 streams, I'm going to say. That's like on the Legend of the Five Rings level of how much I love that game and how much I love to talk about it and how much I could go into the weeds on that game. And so that's a dangerous proposition, but I would love to talk about Blades in the Dark as well. So, all right, everybody, I will see you on the Discord. And if you're not a member of the Patreon, sign up, and then I will see you on the Discord. Look forward to seeing you all there. We'll catch you Thursday, and if not, next Tuesday, Fistful of Flowers. So be there or be square. All right, everybody. I will see you later. Peace.